This podcast is brought to you by Ironside. The logistical complexity of oil and gas field operations can make it difficult to stay on top of who is doing what, where, and when. That's where Ironside comes in. And so Ironside connects E&Ps, midstream companies, and service providers so they can collaborate and coordinate with the field services and internal resources more efficiently. Ironside was designed to support everything from fluid hauling and hotshots to maintenance and trades, making it one of the most versatile field operations and logistics management tools on the market. How do they do it? Well, the secret sauce is, regardless of what type of service, every single job you need done is going to follow the same core workflow. Somebody requests a job, it gets scheduled, the job gets executed, what gets done is documented, and it's reviewed, approved, and the data and the documentation gets sent wherever it needs to go kind of from there. So Ironside has spent years perfecting their fit-for-purpose function, making their core workflow configurable to any field activity so that you can lower operating costs, reduce your risk, and be more effective across your entire field operation. So whether you work for an E&P, midstream company, or service provider, if you're managing field operations and logistics, you're going to want to take a look at Ironside. They were also the EnergyTech Night Midland winner a few years back. They've also been on the podcast in the past, good friends of ours. So go check them out. Visit ironside.app/DW to learn if your company is eligible for a free 3-month trial. It's ironside, SIGHT.app/DW. Click the link in the description and let them know that we sent you. What's up, Wildcatters? Welcome back to another episode of the Oil and Gas Stars podcast. This is special for me because this is number two with Will Womble and Ronak from Umbrage. I think I pronounced it Umbrage the first time you came on. Yeah. It sounded nice and French. But you guys, I love doing these episodes where we're able to come back and just see in a short period of time how far a company has come. And so like what we had you talking about recently, you guys were acquired. And so we'll dive into that today. You talked about that at EnergyTech Night, and I love these kinds of stories in this space. That's what we need. We need a lot more of it. And I think you guys have done a lot of really, really cool work. And so Ronak, it's good to have you here for the first time. So also co-founder over at Umbrage. You were the CTO, right?
CDO, yes.
Okay. CDO?
CDO, yeah.
What does the D stand for?
Chief Delivery Officer, Chief Digital Officer.
Okay.
I played multiple roles there.
All right.
He was chief everything, whatever we needed to do. Especially on the delivery side, which encompassed a ton.
I love it.
That's where we put all the money that we ever brought in or made. We put it on the delivery side. So pretty much the whole company was coming up. He was responsible for in terms of making sure we were hitting what we needed to hit.
I dig it. So if you want to know the full story of Umbrage, go back and listen to our episode that we did with these guys in early kind of 2021. You can just go on the website, search it, go on your podcast player, search it. But really quickly, high level overview. What do you guys do? And then let's dive in. Let's catch up everything that's happened in the last couple of years.
Go for it. You want to do the overview?
Yeah. So Umbrage is a digital craft studio. So what that really means is that we're centered around a concept of crafts. Back in the day, you have craftsmen that were really focused on one thing. And so they got really good at it. And so when we break our crafts down, we break it down between product management, design, engineering, and DevOps. And so when we started this, we were like, hey, a lot of digital products are being built across the enterprise. I think a lot of them are not overly scalable. And so anything that we wanted to do, if you hear about our hype video, if you hear anything that we talk about scale all the time, is because we're done with the MVP game. We want to build scalable first versions that we can build on and then enhance as we go. Mm-hmm. And so the only way to do that was with these 4 crafts. These 4 crafts deeply working together and learning how to work together. Mm-hmm. And so that's, the premise behind where we started Umbrage is like, hey, let's build scalable first versions, but also let's take a focus on craft. I don't want a developer coming in trying to be a managing director. I want a developer coming in who wants to write the best code in the world. And so that we centered around that from a delivery perspective.
What's the sweet spot of like kinds of projects you guys like to work on?
It's evolved. I mean, when we were here in 2021, as you dubbed it, the coming out party, there's, 30 something people, starting out with 6. Mm-hmm. Those 6 people are still here today, which is
That's awesome.
A real proud thing. Really, really proud. And we did, digital craft studio, digital product studio. We've evolved as well from a storytelling and introductions. We're more of a venture studio because the sweet spot of what we're doing goes back to kind of days of, really one of the first ones we did was Eliox. But even more so Cold War too. We're building the companies while we're building the products. Because a lot of times in what we're seeing in the enterprise, especially in the fintech space, consortium-backed startups, they're all, half the market come together, massive Fortune 100 companies. Let's put some money in. Let's form
Especially
a company.
with EnergyX, yeah.
And then let's go solve that. We got
Mhm.
natural market buy-in. And so what's happening, they go and hire, understandably so, a handful of C-suite folks but they still just have a whiteboard idea that they need to get a product. Well, the company needs to be built just as much as the product. We're not investing, obviously, the capital into something, but I'm like, we're a venture studio. We are building the company while building the product. That's been pretty cool to see because we don't have IP. We got people, we got process, we got methodology. And it's really cool to see, especially like at Cold War, who we've been out of that project for a couple of years now, but Brett and team still running the same methodology that we helped implement early in 2020, 2021 timeframe being used today. You can't see code that is replicable or sellable from that. But it's really cool to see that a lot of the things you put in the process and put into place still being utilized today. So venture studio is how I always introduce us now.
So do you feel like you guys have kind of moved more upstream of maybe you still do some startup work? I don't know. You guys let me know. But maybe is it more working with some of the corporates to create more innovative products at scale? Is that accurate or no?
I mean, we're still building products at scale and still doing it in both the enterprise and the startup game.
Okay.
Where we've pivoted, it's not even pivoted, where things have kind of evolved. You know, we were a young entity. We were going where we could go to
evolve 10
survive.
times a year usually, right? So like it happens.
But we're playing around in the blockchain Web3 space, fintech, and like there's not a lot out there. So whatever we're doing, we're kind of carving a new path. But there's a ton of enterprise and there's a ton of startups trying to figure out what is this thing.
But I think naturally, like we started with a lot of startup level work. We are moving more towards the enterprise, but when you look at the enterprise, it's actually still quote unquote startup level work, just because the enterprises are now bounding together to solve big business problems. And particularly when you think about Web3, it's everyone has to kind of be on the platform for it to work. So you're seeing like in New York, you're seeing a lot of the big banks bound together to do like tokenization platforms, to do bond platforms, syndicated loan platforms. Mm-hmm. And so we're getting plugged in with all those. And it's ironic that you see a Houston-based startup here that did a digital product studio working with all the big banks in New York. And what you see there is that like not many people understand the Web3 space today. And I think Will says it well. It's not Web 2 to Web 3. It's like Web 2.5 is what he calls it. And in that world, there's a lot of architectural work that has to be done. And there's not a lot of studios out there that know how to build this. Mm-hmm. I proudly say that I think we're one of the largest Web 3 studios in the country, mainly because we know how to build these large platforms on distributed ledger, but still tying back to this Web 2 world.
Yeah. So you juxtapose that with, I know Brandon Brown, CTO for Vital, formerly known Laredo. You know, he comes in here a lot because he's done some podcasts in this room. Vital's a huge client of ours. And we're still field data capture, dynamic routing. You know, it's not basic, but data driven from the field. There's not a Web3 componentry there, but it's still really sexy work to us to go out and do that. So you've got both ends of the spectrum from some cutting edge emerging technology, but you still got folks that are trying to lead with digital, because I'd say Vital really is doing a great job leading with digital, coming from the well to figure out how to efficientize its own workforce in order to be that much more optimized when it comes to production. So, we will not forget the roots of where we are, because it's still our bread and butter. Our model for being in Houston, leveraging the network that we've been fortunate enough to have from our past, and help the folks that need help in and around the energy and natural resources space. That is still a big mantra. It's just the Web3 kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah. And really just in the latter or first part of 2022 and for the rest of the year. And that wasn't even the reason why, quite frankly, Bain made the acquisition. They didn't even know how much Web3 space. They were more interested because of the energy and natural resources.
So I know we talked about this last time we were here, but just I think it's an important point to hit on again. To the naysayers who are like, oh, you guys are just like a product development shop. Talk to me about the secret sauce. And we've talked about this at length, but to talk to the audience about the secret sauce that really sets you guys apart. And then let's dive into the acquisition.
Well, so they've heard it from me, and I love it because, Ronak and I building the company, we're always the ones in the room. And, I would play quarterback for a lot of it. He'd correct whatever it was that, made mistakes. So it's awesome to hear from his perspective, because the phrase you use on the first podcast, don't call him a dev shop. And I love that you call that. But yeah, tell him the sweet spot / special sauce.
Yeah, I think it goes back to like at the core of what we do is at product. We're not like, when you look at ourselves, we don't look at ourselves as designers or product managers or engineers. In fact, we call ourselves product managers, product designers, product engineers, because at the core, we have to all think through this product. If you look at like the evolutionary like of building products, it was like, it used to be these technical guys in the garage who built something really cool and they tried to sell it to the market and they realized no one's going to buy this because it's all technical jargon. It's all very, very robust. And then the world overcorrected and went to this place of, let me build design thinking everywhere. So that you see everybody hosting design thinking workshops and putting all these sticky notes everywhere and thinking that's building products. And really at the heart of it, it's a happy medium between the two. When you do projects with Umbrage, it's not just a product manager and designer that's working with you. You'll see an engineer sitting there all the way through the discovery process. It's because if he can deeply or she can deeply understand what's going on from a technical perspective, from a product strategy perspective, well, now they're going to be able to architect the platform way better. And a lot of the time what we see is just at the core is that these three teams didn't work well together. They're not knowing that, like, the product manager doesn't know what to use the designer for. A designer has no idea how to interact with an engineer, and they're all working in silos. And that's usually what's breaking down a product. And, one of the early projects that we had, the CTO came to me and was like, hey, I think I should fire my entire engineering team. Right. And I was like, well, let's take a step back here. I don't think that's a good idea. And I've told him, I was like, hey, if you fire your entire engineering team, we'll hire every single one of them. So I actually think that it's less about how good you think your engineers are and more about how the process and the methods that you run to build digital products. And when they got down to it, at the end of our project, they were running no different than Umbrage. And what they realized was that, hey, it is starting with product management, design, engineering, all having a vision, all working together, all creating the strategy. Once they have that strategy intact, then they can go do what they went to school for. They don't necessarily need to all work together, all hand in hand. But up front, a lot of people break down right there.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the acquisition. That's the big news. First off, congratulations to you guys, because hats off. It's amazing. You guys have built something so awesome, so special. And you did it in record time too. And then to sell to just such a prestigious organization like Bain, I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. And so let's talk about, like, how did that come to be? Did you guys work together over time? And what does it look like now? What has changed? And then I'm curious, like, what does the future look like for you guys?
So what's funny about it is I met Ronak first during the last acquisition that I went through. And it was at Accenture. And he was part of the digital hub that was wanting to do something a little different back in 2015, 2016, where you saw this kind of movement happening. There was a lot of lessons learned during that, I'll call it integration, that we were not shy about sharing on both sides. Ronak is always quick to point out, hey, it wasn't like when you guys, the acquiree coming in, there were some mistakes there too, much as there were on, the one acquiring. And so we shared that throughout. I always use really bad analogies, and I've done it before. I did it at Tech Night. We took our time with Umbrage. We were a crock pot, not a microwave. And I think that was a really important process to follow. And we took the same approach when we got introduced to Bain. We were introduced to them in late January, February of 2022. We didn't sign an LOI till October. And
was it them contracting you guys to do work, or was it, hey, maybe we can leverage you guys to do some work with our clients? Like, what was that?
It was introduction through a board member that had done some work. And it was just hey, meet these guys. And we met pretty high up initially, just a general conversation. Tell us about Umbrage. And
we remember the day we left that meeting, and we both looked at each other like, that went really well. We have no idea what it was about, but it went really well. And I think they quickly saw our capabilities. If you look in the market today, like, their competitors have digital capabilities.
Yeah.
And maybe Bain today has some digital capabilities, but not as maybe up to the McKinseys and BCGs which they see themselves against. And so I think, they quickly saw that, hey, this could be an avenue for us to build that capability. But originally, I think it just started with just, hey, how do we partner with these guys? It wasn't so much acquisition. It was like a partnership that kind of fostered into an acquisition
So
conversation.
traditionally with Bain, is their bread and butter, is it strategy in the same way that it is McKinsey, or are they trying to be more of like the tech consulting group like Accenture is?
The former. I mean,
Okay,
yeah,
so
they,
they're
they,
definitely
they are
McKinsey.
competing. You know, it's always the top three
Okay.
from a strategy firm: Bain, McKinsey, BCG. You know,
Okay.
intermix where you are, but they're at that stratosphere when it comes to who you go to for true strategy. The interesting thing that I didn't know until getting, maybe should have, it's definitely public knowledge. You know, a very hefty portion of work that Bain does is on the private equity side. They have
Didn't know that.
big relationships for business building. Business building is a huge component for Bain in working with private equity groups and the portfolios of those PE firms. And so that is a big deal. And that's, again, going back to kind of how we've pivoted and evolved the pitching from a venture studio, building companies and building product. That's not how we got introduced to Bain, but they definitely resonated with them throughout the courtship and the relationship and the crock pot that we were all sitting in from a relational standpoint. They deeply care about relationships. They're very focused on their brand. They do not want it diluted because of a project. They'll turn projects away. And they're very loyal to employees, loyal to clients. All of those very much tracked what we were trying to do at Umbrage from a cultural standpoint.
This podcast is brought to you by EnergyX. Are you tired of paying huge rates to the big cloud providers? Are you worried about being booted off a cloud platform if your company doesn't meet their ever-shifting standards? Ready to step up your data security and disaster recovery game? Well, ladies and gentlemen, your new cloud is ready. Introducing xCloud, the scalable, resilient computing cloud that is also actually affordable. It's high performance compute for half the cost. HPC for HTC. xCloud from Red Team is opening a beta program for new cloud computing customers, and that means you, my friend. The xCloud is powered by the XMDC immersion cooled modular data center from EnergyX. I've seen this data center in operation, and it is a total game changer. So if you want more information about the beta launch, go to the URL in the description. Type in promo code BETA, BETA, for 50% off of your first instance. And so the URL is going to be digitalwildcatters.com/EnergyX. So walk me through this courtship. What did that, pretty much a year, right, of that? And so like, what kind of stuff did you guys do together?
Well, we didn't really do any projects together, but I think
Yeah.
what we quickly realized was that like Bain does a lot of this, like you said, strategy level work. And a lot of times out of those strategies, 9 out of 10 times today, a strategy that comes to solve some sort of business problems ties to a digital product.
Mm.
And I think what they were seeing was that every single time they would build this tremendous strategy. And then, these are shorter engagements, maybe 6-month engagements. And then they would hand it off to a big SI partner to come deliver, right? And so I think what they quickly saw was, hey, if we are doing all these strategies, we're building all these great business case studies around how to grow these businesses. And a lot of times it is a recommendation to build a digital product. It'd make perfect sense to have an Umbrage there that says, oh, hey, this is our digital product partner that can come in and help build those products out and make not only the decks that they put together that are really, really, valuable, but actually take those decks and bring them to life.
Yeah, we got to know the, higher level board folks from Bain, the global leaders, the Americas leaders, and just got to know them. And I always say education is our biggest competitor, and educated on who Umbrage is and what is it that we do. The interesting thing that happened that's awesome, we love this, didn't expect it. Throughout that long get to know you period, we were meeting with them on a regular basis, and to the point where we're like, where is this headed? Because it was taking up a lot of our bandwidth while we're still trying to, we went from 35 employees at the end of 2021 to the end of 2022, which most of which was getting to know Bain as well, with 80 plus folks. So we were hyper scaling at the same time. What we really appreciate too, and Bain getting to know us just as much as the other. Originally, the plan was going to be to fully integrate, roll into. There's another division inside there that sponsored the acquisition, and that's where we'll go. But it was our sponsor on the global level, and then the Americas lead said, "Hey, we don't want to mess this up. And that was a concern. Kudos to them for recognizing it. They have something internal called a BSL, branded service lines. And that's what Umbrage is. So we are a separate entity. We're wholly owned by Bain, but we're a branded service line. Our LLC is still intact. We still use it for contracting purposes. They didn't want to mess with the special sauce process methodology by trying to integrate too quickly. They just said, you know what, we'll look at that later. How do we take and build upon what you guys kind of got rolling to the point where they've deployed an entire team to Umbrage as if we're a client trying to help scale, much like they do in the private equity world. So it's not just an acquisition from an upfront perspective. They've definitely followed through and like, how do we take this and go global? Because that is their goal.
So we've had over the years, we had a few acquisition offers. None of them ever like materialize, and it's like it's an interesting, like, I don't know, it's an interesting feeling, or I guess like it's kind of like a whirlwind of feelings, right? There's like this excitement, but there's also like, what does it look like? It's kind of terrifying. Yeah. Like, we've got my baby here. What does my baby look like if I'm with you guys? Like, and also, I mean, Rona, maybe you were part of, I can't remember if y'all worked together on the previous company, but you also sold your other company to Accenture.
That's where we first met. He was at Accenture.
Oh, you were at Accenture.
So we see both sides of it, right?
Yeah. So that's really interesting because like, I'm just trying to like get inside your head because this is such a great success story of like, what is like kind of like this playbook, or what are things that you've realized to put yourself in this position first off, but then like to make the right decision with, you know, hey, your baby is now like with Bain. Like, I would love to hear both of y'all's thoughts on like maybe things you were worried about or things you were excited about or any of that kind of just like sticks out to you.
Well, I saw Accenture make massive amount of acquisitions throughout my 7 years there. I mean, I saw Chaotic come through. Our CTO Ahmed, we saw his firm get acquired at Intrepid. And so, you know, what you see a lot of is that their capabilities when they came in weren't really matched. Their hierarchy, our org structure at Accenture was not matched to what they were really good at. And that broke down. And so one of the big things that we were really conscious of was like, hey, we have an org structure that works for us. We're not everyone's trying to become, like I said, a partner. They want to be craft-based. They want to stick to that stuff. They want to continue learning and delivering projects. They don't want to just become this random salesperson that's going and trying to sell work. And sometimes in the consulting model, that's kind of what gets pushed. So we spent a lot of time talking about org structure, what worked for us. And we really pushed that pretty heavily. A lot of what we used from an example standpoint was like, and I think I said this a dozen times throughout the acquisition process, was like Microsoft and LinkedIn. I think that was one of the best acquisitions that Microsoft has done. And if you look at Microsoft across all their acquisitions, they try to fold them all in, and they all Nokia, you have Skype, you have a bunch of failed acquisitions. But then you see LinkedIn and what worked there. In fact, what they did with LinkedIn, they were just like, stay a separate company. You guys are on your own. Keep your own hierarchy. Keep your own laptops. Keep your own emails. But just use our buying power. Use what we have here that can make you guys more successful. And if you see LinkedIn as of late has just gone nuts and become very, very successful. I actually think the first year, I think I'm correct on this, but the first year they were actually running on AWS's servers too. Even though Microsoft had Azure, they didn't force them to switch over. And so that level of partnership is really where great acquisitions happen. And we use that case study to inform Bain on. And I think that's what's driving today is like, hey, Bain stays as Bain, Umbrage stays in Umbrage, but we get access to all their clients, all of their partnerships like OpenAI and et cetera. And that is only going to make us better and grow faster.
Yeah. So it's on the people side too. We said from the very beginning, we're going to look at this. Maybe it was a bold statement. Through one event, we're going to look at this from our perspective of what are we going to stand up and say on the day if this thing goes through, where everyone's at the studio. What is the reason? What is the answer to the question, why is this good for Umbrage? And why is this good for the individuals inside Umbrage? And we said, hey, if we can answer that question and we have it legit, we're not having to make anything up, then we'll know we orchestrated this correct. So and going back to loyalty and brand, that very much wasn't just a line from us. That was what was really important because all we have is the people. But I know that very much resonated with folks in Bain to where they're like, this is even more a good thing than we thought of. Because we referenced that when we stood up the day of the announcement and said, remember what we said we're going to do? Now it's time to tell people why it's good for Umbrage, why it's good for them. And so you had both the business aspect of it, but also the culture aspect of it that lined up pretty good.
So now we have a little bit of a tight squeeze, a little bit of a hard stop today. So what does the future for Umbrage look like?
Go.
I mean, in particularly for us, I think we are 50 folks in Houston and the other 50 folks probably sitting across the country. We have a large presence in Monterrey, Mexico with the nearshore. So we have when we got acquired, we were 9 folks there. We're 22 folks today.
Wow.
So we think Monterrey is going to be a big growth center for us. And what we don't like to do is we don't like to call it a nearshore center. We like to call it just another studio for us. It's because I don't want to belittle them in any way. I think the folks coming out of Monterrey, Mexico are very talented. In fact, they can code it just as fast and good as our onshore developers. And so our growth is going to be in these different regions. Today, we're going to service most of the US, but we have growth opportunity that's coming from Brazil already in Sao Paulo. We have a lot of coming out of the Middle East and quite a bit coming out of EMEA within London. So, I wouldn't be surprised in the next few years if you see a studio in these different markets and us having a more global footprint.
I guess somebody asked the same question, rephrased in a different way. What is the North Star now? Obviously, you can continue growing. Everybody wants to grow. You want to grow your business. You want to grow revenue. You want to grow employees. You want to grow your impact. What is your North Star?
It's a bold statement. My goal is to get Bain to be a digital product studio that does strategy.
That's what I love. I love bold statements.
Not a consultancy that's digital. And to lead differently, to lead with the product lens and bring strategy across. Or let me rephrase, to pierce new entities with the product, tip of the spear, and then bring strategy across. The other way has been done a lot, and we said that during the courtship. That's what we'd love to see you guys do. We'll see how well we're to implement that. But so far so good, rolling along. But I would love to see this thing go outside the United States and to really take this and see if we can't, quote unquote, go global.
Well, when we put out our mission statement that said we're going to build the most valuable products in the world, half our studio kind of chuckled at us. They're like, the world, how's little Umbrage here in Houston going to impact the world? And that's how we made the announcement for Bain. And we do think that now we have the ability to build the most valuable products in the world. There's a lot of studios out here building products every single day. We want to build the most impactful products. And if we can do that, the only way we do that is by having the right strategy. So this partnership here makes a lot of sense to us.
Oh, absolutely. So for those listening, obviously in oil and gas, who are the kinds of companies that you guys want to work with? What kind of projects do you want to take on? Obviously, you want to go global. So it'd be great to get Saudi Aramco or somebody like that on board and create something super innovative. Who else should reach out to you guys?
So what's interesting is for the first time in my digital kind of career / lifespan, we're touching all sectors of oil and gas, upstream, mid, and
That's
down.
awesome.
And so being able to stay up, going back to the cold war days of digital frac, working with Vital, and playing around in and around the E&P side. But now with the work that we did with EnergyX and some other entities, the midstream and the trading space has a real big.
That's actually a huge advantage by you guys actually kind of working across upstream, midstream.
Well, yeah, and
downstream
this guy's one of the foremost experts on fuels retail downstream because he worked a lot at Shell, and we've got several folks that did. And so one of the big projects that we're doing and working with Bain on in Mexico is with 7-Eleven and their in-store pickup, their loyalty program, a lot of which we did in the past for Shell and the downstream. So to be able to touch on all those and have use cases on all of those really opens up the spectrum inside, as Bain calls it, ENR, energy and natural resources, an area they did not yet have a digital capability to go in that also understood, as you well know, the technical aspect of the space. That was a very appealing aspect of Umbrage to them, to know we got the technical chops from a digitization standpoint. We also know we can walk in and not going to fall all over ourselves when we're talking about wireline, frac, or any other technical oil and gas term, because we're not foremost experts on that, but we're very knowledgeable and comfortable talking about it in the room.
You also have like these energy clients. A lot of them try to do these like digital transformation initiatives where they go hire one of these big SI providers and they give them $10-20 million and say, hey, revolutionize my upstream business. And I think that for the longest time, it was just a bunch of management consulting folks going in, trying to figure out what's going on, building siloed applications, and then building another siloed application. You do that for a year, and then they realize, hey, we're not getting the value, and then they axe that contract. And I think that the perfect partnership with Bain's strategy and Umbrage, Bain figuring out how to really revolutionize upstream from a business case standpoint that has great KPIs behind it, and then Umbrage actually being able to deliver and build those. My goal in the energy space is to take some of these big digital transformation work because I think everybody does it the same way, and there's a unique offering that we could bring to the table that's completely different for at least this industry.
Well said.
I love it, guys. I wish we had more time because I just love talking with you guys. I love hanging out. I love seeing the products that you guys have built. It's absolutely beautiful stuff. And I'm just so excited for all of this success. And I can't wait to do this again in the future and just hear how far you guys have come.
Dude, so I'll end. Thank you with how we began the first one. What you guys are doing for Houston, what you guys are doing for tech,
yes,
and the entrepreneurs out there. You've seen the growth and the impact. And it's not just in Houston anymore. I'll say thank you for that. Thank you for the platform. Thank you for the opportunity. But just for putting a big spotlight on Houston. And it's really, really two guys that grew up, born and raised in Houston.
Appreciate that.
It's pretty cool to see the impact and the opportunities Digital Wildcatters are giving to a lot of really cool entrepreneurs. So thank you,
man. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
If you guys like the episode, take 2 seconds, share it with your friends, all your colleagues, leave us a rating and review, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.